Hello, this is the LEGO Star Wars The Mandalorian Imperial Light Cruiser set, aka Moff Gideon's ship. There are basically no side builds with this set, just a bunch of figures that we'll look at later on, so let's focus on the main ship. In universe, this thing is called a Class 546 cruiser, which is heavily inspired by and in fact based on an Arquitens cruiser from the Empire, which also goes back to the Republic era. They went through some changes, and the LEGO designer seems to have pulled some inspiration from all three together into this thing, which is a little bit awkward. I'll get into some of the details of that. But I wanted to talk about the overall construction because this is very much like a Star Destroyer in, its general shape and presentation and everything. So you would expect this to borrow a lot of techniques that LEGO has used for their Star Destroyer models, roughly minifig compatible Star Destroyer models over the past, decade or so, which have had very similar strategies for their structure, which is very important so that you can actually pick the things up without them falling apart, and for just the general shaping, to get the wedge plates especially to be lined up where you want them to be, and to get them to not be entirely flat. So in other words, to get the subtle angle here. There's also an angle on the underside where it's covered under there. And there are some techniques that are definitely very similar to some of the stuff that I've seen before, but this is unique enough to me and felt just better going together. All the sub-assemblies go together much more strongly, much more securely, much more perfectly. The angles match up. There are very few gaps until we get up to the very front here. This is the worst part where you can actually see through to some Technic pieces that are colored in ways that we don't want to see. But beyond that, the rest of it I think actually goes together really well, and it just felt good to me as a build. The build process felt good. This one doesn't have the hidden deployable retractable handle like the Star Destroyers have had for a long time. Instead, the entire bridge is a handle. This is connected directly to the Technic skeleton of the whole thing, so you can pick the whole thing, the whole craft up right from here. And this is actually strong. You can move this around. It's not going to come off. It's kind of scary to think of that. You don't expect that. It looks like just a regular brick build, but it's connected to Technic stuff in there. That works out pretty well. In terms of exterior details, you have these turrets here, which are good. You can individually move the barrels up and down. You can also rotate these around, and they are not free rotating, so they will stay because they're ratcheted. Each one has a pair of spring-loaded shooters in there. If you don't want to see those spring-loaded shooter tails, just leave those out entirely, and then the whole thing will look like, there you go, like that, which isn't bad, to have an optional action feature built in there. And somebody pointed out on stream while I was building this that it kind of looks backwards while you have those in there. Like this is where it's shooting out, which is actually supposed to be towards the rear. Now, this design here has these side cannons. There's a pair of them there, a pair of them there. Those actually should not have been on this specific ship, Moff Gideon's ship, the Class 546 ship, nor should they have shown up on an Imperial Arquitens class cruiser. This is a remnant from the Republic days, so this is just a little bit of confusion there. Also, the docking port here looks different than it does on Moff Gideon's one, and then we've got a couple of hangars over here instead of having some stuff that's built up. So that's a tiny little almost nano, micro, I guess, TIE fighter build. There's one on either side that you can pull out. Just has a handful of pieces used for it. It's a cute little thing, I guess, a little squarish for the wings, but what can you expect for this size? Printed canopy piece there, but that really shouldn't be there, just technically speaking. It doesn't bug me that much, but altogether, the things that are off on this for what it's supposed to be add up, such as, here's another, at the back. You got the 3 big engines. That's cool, but not for this specific craft. There should have been 2 additional small engines in here and 2 over here, a total of 7. To get to the interior, you just come to the front and flip all this up. That is pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and that gives you access to a large area where you can put lots of minifigures. Now, minifigures cannot stand all throughout here. I think they can stand towards the back, but then as you move forward, they lose. There's just a few places where you can have them standing. Most of the places, you're not going to have enough just height in there once the top comes down. But At least this is covered up well. It's a complete floor. There's not a whole lot of Technic stuff going through that, interrupting it, creating very small spaces where you can attach feet. There aren't big gaps around the sides. You do see more interior Technic stuff that you don't want to see, especially with the blue colors there. The red's not quite as bad, but the blue is. They only use stickers for details. These are, I think one of them has a thermal detonator in them. One of them has a electro binocular set in it, just, you know, one regular piece. Another console over there, and that is it though. That is all you get for interior space, because like I mentioned, this is all dedicated to structure. So I can, let's see, I think, yes, I can hold this entire ship up by from a single finger under here, because there's that much structural support in here. And as a result, there's no space to even put a single minifigure up here in the bridge. Those are stickers, by the way, for the bridge windows, which I actually think look pretty nice. There's no space under here, no space or access back here, even to store weapons or anything. Same back here. This is just a kind of a cowling. So you have access to the tiny little misplaced hangers and the front, and that's it. At least the front is large, but for a ship this large and it costs this much, it would have been nice to have more use of more of it. Now, there is just one additional thing that I want to point out here that's really funky. They've set up this little rail here, and there's a action feature. You put one of those micro TIE fighters down in this rail. So right there is where it stays, and then you just push the plunger and this shoots out. So it's a TIE fighter launcher or shooter, and it goes like 6 inches, maybe 9 inches, something like that, and then falls to the ground. It's not great, and I don't know how many people or how many kids even want to spend a lot of time launching those tiny little things that can't be interacted with the minifigures in any way, shape, or form, and they don't give you anything to fight with them. And these also kind of fall apart a little bit easily, so that's not great. Here's a look at the underside for folks who may want to suspend this from a ceiling or something, or have it extending over the edge of a high shelf. No terrible colors under here. It's fairly consistent, so not too bad. I don't ever like the look of the undersides of Lego plates, but as things go, this is about as good as you can reasonably ask for without adding a whole lot to the price of the thing. You just have to deal with, in terms of bad aesthetics, you just have to deal with seeing through the mandibles there and the blue Technic pins. Does look really good from the front though. That is a pretty nice angle and, you know, shapes up well. The back is a little bit disappointing to me, not just because of the missing engines, smaller engines in between, but because the glowing main engine outlets are too dark because of the dark gray surrounds behind them. Looking at figures, here are Moff Gideon and the Mando himself, Din Djarin. That's a very good Din Djarin figure, although I have started to finally realize what fans have been saying for a long time, that the print for the helmet is not good. Just the design of it, it's too wide. The center vertical strip of black there is just entirely too wide, and it's supposed to also taper a little bit towards the bottom. But Moff Gideon looks fantastic, especially with that cape. I love that cape. It's like burgundy on the inside, but black on the outside. It's the nice soft stuff that will flow very easily. The only thing I don't like about this character is the blade. It's just a plain bar, a plain 4-long bar, and that feels to me, I don't use this term lightly or frequently, but it just feels lazy. That really should have been done as a different piece than this. It really, that feels like something they would have done 10, maybe even 20 years ago. Underneath here, you can flip this up to see the back print for that. I need to take this off because this is not a flexible piece. There's the alternate face, and then Din Djarin does not have a face at all. It's still just a plain black head, which is unsurprising to me, and I'm actually okay with that. I really like the arm printing over there. And I do feel like the face printing for Moff Gideon looks enough like a Legoization of Giancarlo Esposito. So yeah, pretty good job there with the graphic design. Next up here are Cara Dune and Fennec Shand. Now this version of Cara Dune is identical to the previous one that they did, so absolutely nothing new there, but it still looks very good to me. The weapons are built identically. Fennec is all new herself, 100%. And that is a very good looking figure, if you ask me. The mold work for the helmet is excellent. The printing on the arms is very good. The printing all throughout the front of the body is very good. I'm happy with everything that I see there for Fennec, with the exception of the absence of an alternate headgear piece for her. So they don't give you a hair piece for her, which would have been really useful. This face actually works for me. This one, not so much for Cara Dune, but again, there's nothing new there. Good detailing for the back prints for both of those torsos. This face works for me for Cara Dune. This one for Fennec, it's okay. It's a little bit off, but I appreciate the fold and scar marks. And finally, here's what I've been waiting for. Grogu on the left is Grogu. Yeah, same one we've gotten before. No problem there. I like it. It's cute. The head can be turned, and that's it. It's, built on a baby minifigure base. But the Death Trooper on the right, ooh, I actually like it better in person than I did just looking at the pictures. That helmet is nice. I want so many of them. However, well, I'll come back to that. I want so many of them. That looks really good. And the red that you see there is actually looking through to the minifig head underneath. The printing is really good. I need to take off the armor piece as well so you can see more of the details. They even printed the back of the head. That was not necessary, but I appreciate them going a little bit above and beyond. The printing on the back of the torso is a little bit subtle because you need the light to hit it just right to really get it to shine. But coming around to the front, look at that face. Ooh, yeah, that is good. Oh, I like that face so much. And the printing going straight down into the legs. I'm surprised they didn't do anything for the hips, but see, have some very, very small fraction of a cent per, and it's not that big of a deal. They put the suggestion of the belt printed onto the torso and all, but the face, the head print is really, really good, and the helmet is really, really good. Let me show you what that looks like also with just the helmet on there and no shoulder armor piece, which itself is a pretty good thing. It's not absolutely ideal. It'd be great to get some extra height out of this. Maybe some slightly different arms, maybe even printed. But what is here, I'm super, super happy with, especially the helmet and the head underneath. Finally, these are the leftover pieces, including one of the printed parts for the micro TIE Fighter canopy. And this is what the sticker sheet looks like when it's done. There are a bunch of little stickers, and most of those were used for the bridge. Well, actually, all of them were used for either the bridge or the consoles inside the interior space of the main ship. The price of $150 US, and potentially even more than that in monetary value in other countries, is not good. If you ask me, the value here is poor. I do not feel like this set gives me $160 US worth of stuff. Realistically, I would like to see this sold at $120 US. 100 feels like we're a little bit, this millennium is kind of getting a little bit long in the tooth for $100 to make sense for this in Lego. So I'm giving it 120, and I'm being generous there. I would then expect, with the Star Wars tax, as we like to call it, I would expect it to be retailed at 140. 160 doesn't make sense, especially with only that amount of space that's actually usable there. That said, again, the build process for this felt great. It had nice pacing. The very first bag, actually give you a couple of bag ones. It's more parts than I am used to for just a run-of-the-mill set, but it sets you up for success, and it gives you a nice floor plan to begin with, and then it just keeps going. Especially how these angles here come together, it's super satisfying. Covering up the little greebling details on the sides. Being able to do this, we've never been able to do that with a ship like this. This thing is so sturdy, so well built for durability and handleability. I can grab it here as well. I can practically wield this thing, with the exception of this flapping open. I can practically wield this like a melee weapon. It's that strong. I don't think anybody mocks that well. That said, this is not accurate to the screen material for a couple reasons. One, I think they were going after the wrong ship, and I don't know if that was Lego's fault or Disney's fault or what. Disney 2 years ago, or whenever they started working on this thing, might have said, well, it's basically an Arquitens, so just make an Imperial Arquitens and you're good to go. Oh, yeah, it can it can launch starfighters out the front, and then they just kind of left it to the Lego designers to figure out the rest, and then they signed off on it. That may have been what happened. So I'm not going to point fingers. I also personally am very tolerant of the overall proportion wrongnesses of this, because the proportions of this, you look at it from the top, are not right at all. To the in-universe thing, the nose should have been so much longer. This is a much larger ship than it looks like here, but I'm okay with that because minifigures aren't proportioned right either to actual human beings. So I'm good with all that. As a matter of fact, in universe, what they showed in The Mandalorian does not even work. They have a shuttle, Lambda shuttle, that lands through here. No, that cannot actually happen. That would not fit. It physically would not fit. So there are problems all around in terms of proportions. I'm good with how this looks, but I'm not good with this awesome minifigure, because they included only one of them. And this is the only set to have this figure, and it costs $160. That's not good. That's not okay. That's borderline unethical. If you ask me, so many people want this figure. Just look at it. You don't even have to know the story. Even if the designers and planners and bean counters and everything didn't know the story, you just look at that. Wow, that's really cool. What is it? Is it a stormtrooper? Or, I don't know, it's super cool. We should make lots of these. Big ship should probably have a complement of these, right? Unless the designers literally thought there was only one Dark Trooper in existence. That's the only excuse that I can come up with. Otherwise, the fact that there's only one in this set is unacceptable. I'm very, very unhappy about that. The set should have come with easily four. Okay, so they can do a battle pack. We don't know. They might already have a battle pack that's ready to be announced tomorrow that has, I would like it to have like 4 of those, but realistically it would probably have 2 of those because they're too cool to actually offer to us in mass. Probably have 2 of those and 1 stormtrooper and 1 generic Imperial officer, right? So Jang, what you're supposed to do is just go out and spend another $30 or however much it's going to cost to get a couple of those packs, and then you'll have a nice complement of Dark Troopers. No, I'm not okay with any of that. I'm not going to be forgiving of that whatsoever. This big set that costs this much, and this much over what I expect for the amount of stuff that's here, should have had a full complement of these. I put my foot down on that, and I'm not going to back away from that stance. The rest of the figures are good. This Darksaber blade is also rather unacceptable, in my opinion. They did so good with everything else. Some budgets should have been shifted around. That should have been something different. And that's another case where there was enough material out there, even if the designers knew nothing about what the Dark Blade was going to look like in The Mandalorian. There have been plenty of other places that we've seen it. Bad choice right there. So I've got a bunch of issues with this. I've got a bunch of things that I like about it. At the end of the day, I like looking at this. I like moving around and everything. It just costs way too much for how much goodness that I personally get from all of this. Let me know what you think, though. What's important to you? What are the important hits? What are the important misses here? Or do you just like this overall or dislike it overall? Better, to actually have some reasons behind there. I really would like to hear what more of you think about this on the whole. But thank you for listening to what I thought about it, and I'll talk to you again soon.